There are old maps that draw the ocean like an open mouth. Right along the rim of that jaw, someone scribbled a warning so short it feels almost modern: don't go any farther. And yet, humans are wonderfully inconvenient creatures tell us forbidden.
No.
And we immediately start leaning over the edge to see what's on the other side. So today, instead of steering away from the blank parts of the sea, we're doing the least sensible thing on paper. We're dropping straight into them, following the salt-stained trail of sea monster legends that cling to the water like brine, clings to rope. If you tried to run a forensic investigation on a missing ship in the ancient world, the case file would be brutally thin. Calm skies, a decent wind, the vessel leaves port, and then nothing. No black box, no radio, no GPS ping, no camera footage, just the account of whoever makes it back, if anyone does. And a survivor's story, by necessity, is always a kind of reconstruction you take. Scattered fragments your senses manage to grab in the dark and glue them into something that makes sense. The deep ocean is where information is at its scarcest, so story becomes the tool that fills the gaps. The most unsettling part isn't always the moment a monster is seen. It's the lingering feeling that something down there has been down there the whole time, steady, patient, and utterly indifferent to human schedules. Start in the Mediterranean, in that in-between layer of water where fear becomes geography. Scylla and Charybdis aren't just monsters. They're a navigational nightmare turned into names you can shout across a deck. One side, cliffs and rocks, the kind of coastline that seems designed to tear wood apart. In myth, Scylla lurks there, a living hazard with teeth. The other side, Charybdis, the swallowing whirlpool, gulping water down, spitting it back out, then doing it again, like the sea itself has developed a bad habit. In Homer's telling, Odysseus must choose the lesser disaster, which sounds cruel until you remember. The sea doesn't always offer good options, only options that leave something floating. Strip the myth down to its bones, and you can still see the real terrain: narrow straits, shifting currents, sudden winds, submerged rocks that don't care how heroic your resume is. A single slip of the helm, and a ship becomes a rumor. Legends like these are in a strange way early safety signage stories engine-aired to stick in memory longer than a dry list of nautical hazards ever could. But the shoreline is just the opening act. Once you move beyond the reach of lamplight and familiar coastlines, the story changes its tone. It's no longer only about dangerous places. It's about living things, bodies in the water, too large or too briefly glimpsed to be named with confidence. The Greeks had a word for that: Cetus, later Latinized to Cetus. It becomes the classic template for the sea monster appearing in tales of heroes and sacrifices, the ocean's own version of a sentence passed down from above. Look at ancient art, and you'll see Cetus drawn with a long neck, a huge mouth, a serpentine body, because from a ship you almost never see an entire animal clearly. You see a back arching through mist, a fin slicing the surface, a sudden churn, then silence. And here's a detail that's almost poetic. Cetus eventually helps give us cetacean, the scientific group name for whales. So even when myth takes flight, it often brushes against something real swimming out there. A whale surfacing in fog, exhaling a plume like smoke, then vanishing in seconds. If you're an exhausted sailor with a flickering oil lamp, your brain will happily complete the image for you. And once that story is retold on another ship on another cold night, it tends to grow. A lot of things grow on the open sea: beards, superstitions, and with impressive consistency the size of whatever you swear you saw. Now drift north into the North Atlantic, where fog can turn the horizon into a wall, and the sea can change mood faster than a page flips. This is where the Kraken rises, Scandinavia's signature nightmare, enormous, cold, and not particularly chatty. In legend, it's a giant squid or octopus capable of dragging ships down. That sounds extravagant, but giant squid are real, and the terrifying part is that you rarely see enough to argue with the story. A single tentacle at the surface can look like a thick cable. A line of suction marks on timber can resemble the work of some underwater grappling hook. The rest of the animal remains where the ocean is best at keeping secrets. And in frigid water, memory has a funny habit of enlarging things. It's not even lying. It's just trying to account for how powerless you felt. Then there's Hafgufa, less famous than Kraken, but unnerving in a different, cleverer way. It doesn't need speed. It doesn't need to chase. It doesn't even need to show off. In medieval Nordic descriptions, Hafgufa can appear like a massive shape at the surface, opening what looks like an enormous mouth, and simply waiting like the ocean has set a trap shaped exactly like a safe place. Fish drift toward it, drawn by bait or currents, and disappear into darkness. When enough have gathered, the mouth closes. That sounds like pure fable. Until you remember, nature is full of hunters that do almost nothing at all. They wait where the current funnels prey. They exploit habits, they let the environment do the work. From the deck of a ship, a predator that barely moves is far more unsettling than one that lunges. There's something about a mouth that stays open, calm, and patient, as if the sea has all the time in the world, because of course it does. And from that quiet trap, medieval bestiaries deliver an even crueler twist the living island. Aspidocalone is described as so huge it's mistaken for land. Sailors anchor. They step onto it. They build a fire, cook a meal, thank the heavens. Then, the island sinks, taking everyone with it. It sounds like the ocean playing a prank, but it hits a very human nerve. Out at sea, land is hope. Hope makes people hurry. Hurrying makes people careless. So the legend becomes a warning in narrative form. Don't trust anything that looks convenient in the middle of nowhere. The sea has never been famous for customer service, and it rarely delivers miracles without a catch. There's also a grim irony here. The thing sailors crave, most solid ground, becomes the perfect disguise for what they fear most. But even the fear of sailors is small compared to a culture's fear of the world itself, slipping out of order. That's where Jörmungandr enters the world serpent of Norse myth, so immense, it coils around Midgard and bites its own tail. It isn't just a creature, it's a boundary, the ring that holds the world's shape. Let it release its tail and Ragnarok begins. This is cosmic horror, long before anyone coined the term, the sense that the ocean isn't simply a place you travel across, but a force that defines the limits of control. On land, humans can measure fields, draw borders, write laws. At sea, a shift in current can erase your straight lines and make your confident map feel like a joke. In the ancient Near East and the Hebrew Bible, the sea monster takes on an even clearer symbolic role. Leviathan and the older shadow behind it, Lotan, in earlier texts, embodies chaos, the wild, ungovernable element. Stories of a divine power conquering Leviathan aren't only about strength, they're about reassurance. They say order can exist above deep water. They say the world can be structured even when the sea behaves like a living argument against structure. Some descriptions turn Leviathan into something that makes the water boil a breath like a furnace. Whether literal or not, the emotional truth is obvious. The ocean makes humans feel small. And when people feel small, they either fall silent or they start telling stories. More often than not, they choose stories. Move east again, and the sea becomes a stage for hybrid forms, creatures assembled from the strongest parts of multiple animals, as if the mind is trying to name something it can't quite see. Makara, appearing in Hindu and Buddhist traditions, often carries traits of crocodile, elephant, fish, serpent, sometimes all at once. It can be protective and threatening, a guardian figure tied to water and power. In practical terms, it reflects a simple process underwater. You catch fragments, an outline, a movement, a texture, and then back on land, you stitch the fragments together. The result isn't a photograph. It's a symbol that travels well in speech. And in some medieval Islamic cosmologies, you find Bahamut, a colossal fish supporting the structure of the world. At this point, the scale stops asking permission from biology altogether. But that exaggeration isn't random. It's the mind wrestling with the infinite. When you can't measure the bottom, you start inventing foundations. A vast, unseen sea invites a vast, unseen support beneath reality. The story is less about zoology and more about a question the ocean forces on every culture that lives near it. What is the world resting on? So, what's the recipe for sea monsters? Fog that erases distance, a horizon that turns scale into guesswork. Currents that form whirlpools like mouths, storms that transform disappearance into routine. Carcasses that wash ashore in strange, half-recognizable shapes. Whales breaching, sharks gliding just beneath the surface. Giant squid that exist mostly as hints, scars, beaks, stories because they live where humans don't. Add exhaustion, cold, and a deck that creaks like it's whispering, and the brain will do what it has always done. It will complete the missing pieces. You don't need a real monster to experience real fear. You only need uncertainty and an ocean deep enough to keep feeding it. And even now, with sonar and satellites, the sea still holds onto its darker rooms. Technology lights up more of the map, but it doesn't remove the feeling that the water is looking back. That's why Kraken, Leviathan, Hafgufa, Scylla, and Charybdis, the world serpent, these creatures tell us as much about humans as they do about anything that might swim. Their emotional cartography, a way of marking danger, grief, and awe on a surface that refuses to stay still. The deep is still there. The questions are still there. And the blank parts of the map have never truly gone away, they've just moved farther down. Next time, we can take one of 3 dives a tour through Asian and Southeast Asian sea monster traditions, a darker look at medieval ocean bestiaries and how they shaped explorers' fears, or a straight-up myth versus biology episode matching. Each legend with real animals and real ocean phenomena that could have sparked it. Either way, the water keeps its secrets, and we keep coming back for another look.